Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is a Red Pill Podcast 219, and yet another wild week in these markets. That June 3rd through 6th decode came to life, and what happened on June 5th between Elon and Donald Trump, many are calling a black swan event, but the wolfpack here knows it's just another day in the Matrix. So now that we've hit our key downside target for Bitcoin at the psychological level of 100K, completing its first notable pullback since the April lows of around 10% from the 111K top that was formed leading into the Bitcoin Las Vegas conference. Perhaps some of you remember in my last Red Pill, I mentioned the significance of the 111 code since Bitcoin did in fact top at 111K, and June 5th was 111 days before Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year, and we almost had that full 11% correction into that exact date, which would have been wild, but what did happen was an $11,000 correction, naturally from the 111K to 100K level. So we did in fact get that 11 or 111 code to align in that way, again proving the power of the utility of numerology and gematria in our investment strategy. But of course, most of you here already resonate with that. It's just a beautiful thing to see the numbers line up the way that they just did, and it feels like a fully complete ritual in many ways, especially with the Trump and Elon drama being the icing on the cake near the end. So now that we've made it through this week, we now have the June full moon ahead in about 3 days. And there's definitely a pattern around this specific full moon, the strawberry moon here in the month of June. So that's what we'll focus on in today's Red Pill so that you can be prepared for the week ahead. And just so you're aware, immediately at the start of today's podcast, this is a significant week we're moving into because it's the week leading into the 25th week of the year, which will start on June 16th through June 22nd. That'll be during the week we have the next FOMC meeting. And the significance of this number 25 has everything to do with the year that we're in right now. From the year of the snake decode that I released back in January, which for those of you who are new here, the year of the snake decode is part of an ongoing Chinese New Year decode series that I release every year to decode the entire year ahead. And now that we're here in the Gregorian year of 25, as you can see, we also have the Hebrew year of 5,785. This is not news to many of you, but you're aware that this adds up to 25, and we are in the year of the snake, and the snake is the serpent, and serpent gives you 97, and 97 is the 25th prime number. So this number 25 is clearly important for this year, no matter how you look at it, whether it's the Gregorian year, the Hebrew year, or in the Chinese system. And speaking of this 25 connection to the number 97, since 97 is the 25th prime number, remember how the entire market crashed into April 7th of this year? And since that date, it's been our bottom across the board. Well, April 7th is the 97th day of this year. Couldn't be any more perfect. So as you can probably tell, we have a lot to cover in today's Red Pill, so let's jump straight into it. But before we get started, as always, make sure to get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice if it's a little later out there in the Matrix. And also make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins that you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill. But before you leave a comment, please just make sure you use the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered that project in at least 3 months. So if it's been over 3 months since I've reviewed that altcoin last, or in the event that I've never covered that altcoin before, as long as it has at least 1 year of chart history here on TradingView, you can go ahead and comment below the name of that altcoin and include the ticker symbol next to it as well. I'd greatly appreciate it, and so would our community here. And whatever submissions get the most likes, the most hearts, Those top 4 will be selected for next week's red pill. Now let's get into this. So, as mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the upcoming full moon on June 11th, as you can see over here, next Wednesday. This way you could all be prepared for the week ahead, and that's what we're going to decode right now, as well as simultaneously reviewing the dates of June 14th through 15th to see if we have a pattern, specifically because June 14th is Donald Trump's birthday, and he's obviously been the man of the hour here in crypto land since winning the selection back on November 5th last year. And in many ways, he's actually kind of been the talk of the town here in crypto since the Bitcoin Nashville conference, which he was a speaker at, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he spoke at that event, and we saw a major correction after that event back in 2024. Of course, he then won the election. He then went ahead and did pretty much all the policies he said he was going to do when he was running for office. The market didn't like that so much in the months of March and April, and the rest is history. But pretty much every single thing that he's done, whether it's positive or negative, have dramatically affected these markets in a way that I don't really think we've seen. Well, I guess some could argue that, but I really don't think there's been a time where, specifically for crypto, we saw these sort of this level of influence coming from a president. I do remember, though, in the last cycle, Elon having a lot of influence over there on X. Pretty much everything that he said, at the time it was called Twitter, of course, pretty much everything he said would pump Doge or Shiba, or pretty much the entire crypto market was paying attention to every single thing he was doing. So the fact that these two men were allegedly joining forces and now they're back going against each other, I mean, it's just drama. You all know this. We're not going to give our prana to that today, but it is what it is, right? So we want to look at the full moon in the month of June and see if there's a pattern, and we'll also be at the same time simultaneously reviewing any connections that we can get for Donald Trump's birthday for the 14th of June. So we're just going to be looking back last year, June 2024, into right here, June 22nd. And you can see there was a notable correction into that full moon, which interestingly enough, this whole corrective phase started on June 11th. At least that's when it started to break the daily close structure that was planted before that. And this is going to be the exact same day as the full moon in June this year, right? And then we went ahead and corrected even deeper through the full moon 2 days after we had a low for the month. So it's pretty significant. And we also can see that we had another nasty correction around the following new moon. So please keep that in mind, especially because the new moon this month will be on June 25th. So it'll be within this month of June. And just wanted to kind of throw that out there. We do have a pattern with these new moons leading to dumps. We actually just got one pretty significant and undeniable. We had one back over here in March, obviously big one here in February, clearly after the Trump's inauguration, and many, many, many times last year. So we must always keep that in mind. Now let's go to June 2023. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We're right here. And you could also see, crazy how we had such a similar move over here on June 5th and June 6th. So you all saw the crypto market just do this. Go to the daily. We have June 5th, red candle, June 6th, green. And then we have over here, June 5th, red candle, June 6th, green. Funny enough, this was also around a Bitcoin conference. I think it was Bitcoin Miami. Correct me if I'm wrong. So anyways, just funny. We got that inverse or reverse Twin Towers candle. Literally just like we had on the same exact dates. But also look at how we corrected through the full moon into the date of June 14th being the daily closure low. Obviously, Donald Trump's birthday. And then we had a pivot the following day. And then we moved up into the solstice. Fascinating. Then we have the full moon on June 14th of 2022. This was obviously after we've initiated a bear market, but I do think it's significant when we look at the dump that happened into June 14th. Again, Donald Trump's birthday, massive correction into this date. And then from the full moon date, about 4 trading days later, we had a little bit of a pivot in the short term. And we held sideways pretty much through August, but this is important, the fact that we corrected through the full moon. So we did bottom a couple days after, just like our past 2 examples. Then we had Bitcoin start to break structure over here on June 11th, which is very similar to what happened last year, if you remember. So it's our full moon date this year. And the fact that we did also push about 4 days after, there's a clear pattern. We have June 11th, you need to keep in mind. We have June 14th into 15th, Donald Trump's birthday. You have to keep that in mind. And then the following new moon. How do we react after it? Which over here you can see the patterns continuing to follow very closely. So we're going to zoom in now to this full moon in 2021. Let me just quickly check my levels, make sure everything is good. Awesome. So we have this full moon over here, June 24th, 2021, which somewhat aligns with where our current cycle is right after the start of a lunar cycle initiating. And you could also see that we had a correction into early June, just like we had. And then we pumped up after that into the date of June 14th. And then we pivoted on June 15th and went down again into the following full moon. And then, yes, we actually bottomed technically right around it. So 2 days before and 2 days after, pretty much perfectly for the month of June. Then the following new moon, we corrected after. It's the same pattern, guys. It's happening over and over again. Now, the depth of the correction and etc., that's where things can be just applied to where we're at with today's prices and today's market structure. But I want to show you the energy here and the significance of the dates, which are pretty clear. So we have correction into the full moon. We bottomed technically 2 days after, and then we had a bit of a pivot up, but ultimately short-lived, and then we corrected more after the following new moon. So this pattern shows that there's very much a bottoming structure around the June full moon, plus or minus 4 days, and better hope that we do not flush lower on the following new moon. But given how high Bitcoin has got, to be 100% honest, so much could happen between now and June 24th, which I believe is the next new moon. Yeah, we have the 25th. So, I mean, Bitcoin could literally be poking into new all-time highs again by the 24th. And then, sure, we could have another short correction into 109, maybe 108. And then who cares, right? So we'll talk about that more as this podcast goes on. And all in all, what have I said for the last 4 weeks of Red Pills? I said whatever corrections we get, Chief Wolf will be buying the dip. And this is what I did recently. So I don't care if we go lower again, if we go to 98, doesn't matter if we double bottom and go to 100 again, doesn't matter if we do this inverse head and shoulders at 103. I'll cover all of this during today's podcast, but none of that concerns me. I've already had the limit orders set, they've triggered, and I will continue to accumulate no matter what happens because I do believe July and August should be incredibly bullish overall. So with what altcoins are doing right now and with what Bitcoin dominance is doing right now, anything Bitcoin does to the downside is going to put tremendous pressure on the alts, and waiting for some quote unquote perfect entry probably doesn't serve you much at this time. It's just going to make you too nervous. You're going to have so much anxiety and you're not going to be able to position yourself effectively. So what I've been teaching you over the past month, very much so, is to dollar cost average into position. And I don't want to waste anybody's time right now with this stream of consciousness, but I hope you all kind of just see where I'm coming from. I mean, look at just a couple days ago, Bitcoin was 100K, and now we're pushing up close to 100, and we're already at 106. I mean, these rebounds happen quickly. And you guys probably remember this chart that I drew for you right over here, where I actually illustrated how this can all go. And I mean, damn, what was it, like 1 day difference? And I wasn't drawing this to be specific on the dates, but I was showing you kind of how I anticipated this can go. So with this illustration, it's showing perhaps coming back to 103, maybe around Trump's birthday, and that could also be it. And then look, push up to 110, maybe a double top around the 25th into the next new moon, and then sure, a little bit of a correction after. I mean, this is pretty much what I just said a moment ago, like by mistake. So I hope you guys appreciate this, because I'm not trying to say that this is the end, like we're just going to keel over from here and this was your new all-time high and it's all doom and gloom. Like, no. And anytime we're talking about corrections or pullbacks, it's just so that you're looking at the market in today's environment, which is that if we get another 10% pullback in altcoins that are going to potentially go up 300 to 500% minimum, wouldn't you want to be prepared for that? Right? So it's like, I hope you're all tracking. We're doing our best here. Now, getting back to these full moons for the month of June, I want to now go to 2020. I do think this is a very significant full moon to review. Going to be hiding the drawings here and pulling up the moon phases. So we have June 5th would be your full moon. And this is, of course, very similar to how this year has been following the C19 crash. And we just had the tariff crash and a very similar recovery structure. We could also see this big red candle right here on June 11th. Again, that's the day of our full moon this year. Also, you look at this manipulation, very similar to the recent manipulation we just had that they blamed on Trump and Elon, right? And then if you look at the date of the 15th, from the 14th into the 15th, we had this liquidity grab. So we did have a swipe lower. And then effectively we're up for the upcoming new moon that followed, which is a very similar time of year to our upcoming new moon in June. And then after that new moon, we corrected, guys. It's the same pattern over and over and over and over and over again. But here, you see the lows that we got in May? The two lows that we got in May? We never went lower than that ever again. So this is what I'm saying, like what we recently just did or what we might do next week might be it. You can't be hoping for more and more and more. Although what I will say is Bitcoin was stealing a lot of dominance around here, if I remember correctly. And it was just starting to break down a little bit in dominance as it was getting to this point. So we'll see how that goes, but it is important to mention. And this is actually something I brought up in my last YouTube video that I released where I said Bitcoin could have bottomed just a couple days ago, but that doesn't actually mean that altcoins across the board have bottomed. We might see some isolated projects head a little bit lower because recently they've gotten a little too bullish. So if something gets too bullish too quickly and then there's a balancing of dominance across the board, which today we're seeing a little bit of that. We saw a big jump in XRP dominance today, right? Everything's just going to be balancing right now, guys. So that's how I'd be anticipating for the rest of this month of June to go. Like if I had to summarize what June is, it's a month of balancing. It's just getting everything back into perpetual balance. After we had a very dramatic March and April, now we have a very dramatic May. And it's just this as above, so below vibe. And I think that June is more about stability and stabilizing everything that's just shook up the markets. But still, overall, I'm anticipating we're bullish and we're just going to continue moving up more and more and more as the months progress into September latest. So bull run is on. I'm not changing my opinion on that. But we do have this candle here on June 11th, still fulfilling our pattern. It is happening after the full moon. We are swiping lower. You can see the lower swipe too on the 15th, right around Trump's birthday. And clearly we see the price going lower after the full moon. But in this example, it's also a very bullish example as well. We held support leading into the next leg up. which initiated in the month of July. Same as in 2021 and the same as last year in 2024. So we need to keep that in mind. And I want to revisit where we were during the June full moon in 2017, right over here. So we can see Bitcoin actually pumped up through this full moon, but we see a pivot right here on June 11th. Clearly a very significant date. And then Bitcoin corrected through the 14th and 15th, again in alignment with Trump's birthday. So we have a correction after the full moon, another thing that we're normally seeing, a buyback, a slight buyback into the new moon, and then another short-term correction during the month of June following the new moon. So I do think it could go this way, where our absolute lows could perhaps already be in somewhere compared to this, and then the next correction we get is higher, and then the next correction after that is either a double bottom or higher. And then I'm not entirely sure how this July timeframe could go in comparison to cycles, because I do completely understand that over here we were in the midst of a solar cycle. Whilst in 2020 we were also in the midst of a solar cycle. In 2021 we were in a lunar cycle. And right now we're in a lunar cycle. So there's another bigger energetic conversation to be had, but I do not want to confuse you guys in general, sticking to my overall thesis that the crypto market and the markets in general should remain bullish up until the next total lunar eclipse, which is in 90 days. It's the September 7th, September 8th total lunar eclipse. That's been my thesis going back to Q1 of last year. So yeah, it's been a while of you guys hearing me say this stuff, and it's pretty wild to watch how it's been unfolding, with Bitcoin recently hitting a new all-time high after the first total lunar eclipse of our lunar cycle, which is something that a lot of the people who learned about the eclipse cycles from me didn't believe was possible. And they thought I was kind of like just making this up. But the fact that we've seen it now is pretty significant. Of course, what we all actually want to see is Bitcoin dominance breakdown. That would be the real time to party. So this is why I'm putting so much emphasis on corrections and pullbacks right now, guys, because it's just all opportunities to accumulate altcoins. In a different circumstance, if I saw Bitcoin dominance just absolutely draining, I wouldn't be talking about that stuff. I would just be looking up, clear skies ahead. But with the way that Bitcoin's trading right now near all-time highs, and a lot of altcoins are still not in price discovery, and many are 300, 400, some thousands of % away from retesting their cycle highs from 2021. That's why it's so important for us at this stage of the cycle right now to put emphasis on any last minute opportunities. So here we can see that there's some connection to Trump's birthday date, with another major correction around that time frame. And this is, I believe, significant because this would be Trump's first birthday as the president in his first term, right? It would be his first birthday as the president. So this could be significant for a connection this year, of course, since he's back in the Oval Office as the second non-consecutive term president behind Grover Cleveland. Also, look at how bullish Bitcoin was from late March, pretty much April through late May. It's like seriously the same vibe, just like ultra bullish during that whole time frame after a 30% correction. So we have a 30% correction for Bitcoin. Here we've had a 30% correction for Bitcoin, and then we rallied all the way into late May. And then now we're getting a corrective energy. But you see how this went, where we went pretty much bullish into like June 11th, around the full moon, by the way. And then we had the correction into June 15th. I'm not sure if it'll be 30% again. That's pretty messed up, but this is something to keep in mind. Oh, and 2016, we also had a major correction around the June full moon. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, let me just quickly check. Mic is good. And also, I want to quickly show you how Bitcoin traded around the full moon in 2013, which was the last year of the snake. And that full moon in June, right there, although we didn't really correct much into the full moon itself slightly. I mean, actually, maybe let me take that back. Yeah, because when you're looking at Bitcoin trading at $100, those were the days. Yeah, it's obviously it looks small, but it's actually quite a lot. But yeah, guys, look at this. Major correction into April, bullish into late May regarding the recovery. Then we fold over after the following new moon, which is what just happened. And then we correct hard into past the June full moon, which is part of our pattern. But this is like really, really messed up, although this was the lowest we went for the rest of the cycle. So I just want to kind of reiterate this, that we have a clear correction after all the June full moons, which again seems to be our pattern we've identified, no matter if we're in the June full moon is at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month or even in the middle of the month of June. It's just a clear pattern that Bitcoin likes to continue to correct through the June full moon, or we could just say after the June full moon, even if it's just a couple days, even if it's just 2 days. It's still worth considering because that's a week ahead from now, that full moon. But anyways, here in the 2013 example, we could see a major correction into July 6th, and then Bitcoin rallied all the way up until pretty much the end of August into early September, actually right before the September new moon, which also pretty much aligns with the same dates as our upcoming lunar eclipse. Also, after this, we had a sideways phase until late October. So now, why this might be something worth considering is because Bitcoin seems to like dumping around the new moon that follows the June full moon. And in some cases, that's the July new moon, but this year it'll actually be the June new moon on June 25th. We talked about this a little bit ago. So all of last year, we had a pattern of dumping after new moons, and this year it was also quite a pattern. At least, I think it happened more times than it didn't happen. Anyways, what I want to show you is that last year, in 2024, we had this occur. So we have our new moon top in June, and then we dumped into the June full moon, a little bit of a pivot up, but then an even deeper correction into July 5th. This was a major pivot low, literally on the day of the new moon. Then in 2021, we have the absolute lows come in right here. 4 days before the full moon of July, which would be July 6th if we aligned it with this year's full moon in July, because it's July 10th. So 4 days before would be the 6th. And then remember in 2013, the example we just reviewed, the pivot would be on July 6th as well. And then in 2021, we had that final swipe to the lows on, or 2020, excuse me, we had that final swipe to the lows on July 5th, I believe. 1 second, let me zoom in. Boom, right there. And then we never went lower than that. And it was also on the full moon. So this kind of gives us a bit of a compass for the next 30 days ahead, right? It gives us a roadmap, I should actually say. And I believe that is the case, especially since all of those examples have an incredibly bullish July and August overall, leading into the September new moon, or prior, just shy of this September new moon. So let's summarize all of this, starting with what significant date we have around July 5th and 6th. And I'm sure many of you put the pieces together regarding that connection, and that's the 4th of July, the United States Independence Day. And why this year it's so significant from an esoteric perspective is because our connection to the number 47 and 74. Let me just quickly show you what we're working with here. So this year, this July 4th date is especially significant from an esoteric perspective because our connection to the number 47 and 74, and I've been using it in our decodes all year, ever since Trump became the 47th president of the United States. Then we had Liberation Day on April 2nd, when the entire market started to crash into the date of April 7th, the Gregorian 4-7 date, written internationally as 7-4. And Bitcoin literally bottomed at 74K on that exact date. Then for the next 47 days, Bitcoin rallied to a new all-time high and immediately stopped its rally on day 47 on the date of May 23rd. Let me just quickly show you. You cannot make this up. 47 from 47 or 74K to the new all-time high. So, the 4th of July, also written 4-7 in the States, written 7-4. This would be your 4774 connection. And this date of the 4th of July, including the end date, also is tied to Liberation Day by 3 months and 3 days. So there's your 33 code, the number of transmutation, the master number. Oh, and just a side note, if you take from June 5th, which just happened, this Trump-Elon drama, and you tie it to Elon's next birthday, which is the 28th of June, it's also 3 months and 3 days apart. So that's your 33 ritual. Now, getting back to this, we had the date of 4-7, which was the bottom, connection to 7-4, as above, so below. We have obviously the same date numerology because it's the same numbers. And in my opinion, after we get through the 4th of July ritual this year, we should be seeing the market continue higher. Into the end of July, we should be much higher than where we are at the end of May recently, where Bitcoin topped at 111K. But until then, we still have a full month ahead, and we have our key dates that I want you to pay attention to. Let me see if I have them on a chart. I should. One moment, family. Probably here. Boom. Okay, so I have these all marked out. We have our key dates of the 11th for the full moon itself. Then we have the 14th into the 15th, the 14th of course being Donald Trump's birthday. And then we have the exoteric date of the next FOMC meeting, the next Federal Reserve FOMC meeting, where Fed Chair Powell speaks. And then we have, another thing to mention is that if you take from Liberation Day, I believe this is correct, to the 18th, it is 77 days after Liberation Day when Chair Powell will speak. So crazy. Everything is connected by these numbers. It's just absolutely wild. And the sevens have been everything this year, guys. Why? Because we're talking about the key number of 25. Hebrew year 5785, it reduces down to 25. And all of these 25 connections come back to the number 7 because that's the full reduction, 2 plus 5. This is the year of the sevens. We bottomed on the 7th day of April. Anyways, let's stick on track here. When we take from April 7th, which was the date that the market bottomed, and we go 74 days into the future, that gives you June 19th. Not including the end date gives you the 20th. And if you take from April 9th, which was a date that Bitcoin actually had like a quick final low before moving up, and we were to include the end date, that would bring us to the 21st, and that is the solstice. And remember how earlier I mentioned it being the year of the snake and how serpent equals 97? Well, from the solstice on June 21st, including the end date tied to September 25th, which would technically be the first full day of the new Hebrew year in the Gregorian calendar, although that's not 100% accurate, but you get the idea, since they're using sundown and sunrise as their day, as their true like new day. But anyways, you should get the idea. Now, when we take from the when we look at this for what it is, when we have these two connections from the solstice to this particular day, they're 97 days apart. Again, we're talking about the year of the serpent, 97. And September 25th is the day leaving 97 days in the year, which I just realized earlier. And the mirror of the number 97 is 79. And that's tied to Donald Trump since he turns 79 this week that's upcoming, the week before the solstice. And this is the number associated with gold. in the periodic table as it's the 79th element. And we're talking about the solstice tied to Sol, the sun, which is of course tied to gold. So I am definitely expecting extreme price action around the solstice this year tied to gold. It's hard to say the exact direction because I've looked at Bitcoin price on some solstices, it's correcting, some it's pumping. There's no clear pattern because obviously the moon cycle is adjusting. Sometimes we have eclipses that kind of like throw things off. Sometimes we have Mercury retrograde, we have Venus retrograde. So there's a lot to consider. You can't just take a single date and that's all that matters. Within that date, you would have the date numerology that matters. So there's plenty of other more sophisticated applications than just saying September 25th every year we'll do this, or the solstice will always do this. That's impossible. It does not work that way. But what we do find sometimes is patterns like that, and it's never necessarily on these perfect dates like a January 1st, New Year, or like a solstice or an equinox, but it is kind of around it, coded around it. And that's what we're doing our best here to decipher. Now, I want you to consider that the solstice is about 10 days after the upcoming full moon in June, which is on the 10th or 11th. Apologies. So let's call it 10 to 11 days, depending on how you count it. And I believe this gives us a time frame to expect a pivot. If we haven't pivoted already, it's just too soon to make that call because the price action we're seeing right now as we speak is happening over the weekend and the traditional markets are closed. We did just have like quite a bit of a flash correction recently, so a lot of liquidity was grabbed to the downside, and that's where a lot of unsophisticated leverage traders start piling in shorts, and the market maker knows exactly what to do there, which is a bull trap or a bear trap. So I believe what we're currently seeing right now, sorry to, kind of take a moment and pause and talk about this, is I think we're seeing a little bit of a bear trap playing out where we got a bit of a bull trap leading into the Bitcoin conference. Then they gave us a bear trap and now they're liquidating everyone in both directions. So there was an absolute short squeeze that's been accomplished. All these people got liquidated initially, the short squeeze, and then we have this exoteric event of the Bitcoin conference, bulls getting trapped here, and then you have everybody that was piling in there has already been liquidated on the 5th, blaming it on Elon and Trump, and then now it's just the opposite. So there's so much energy around this, but it's not really the most sophisticated stuff. It's a lot of leverage, and that's why we're only seeing Bitcoin do what it does, and a lot of the altcoins are getting slammed every time Bitcoin has 2% correction. We're seeing sometimes 10% corrections in these more speculative altcoins. So I do believe, with all of that being said, this solstice kind of concept should be more of a pivot time frame. Just too soon to make that call due to the weekend pump that we're getting right now and the fact that CME is closed. We need to see how the traditional markets trade next week to make a more dialed in call for the immediate short term. But regardless what the market does, this is why I took action this week and I bought the dip, adding more to my Doge position, as well as HBAR, Hedera, VeChain, Vitho, and some more Filecoin. And if we do in fact correct a lower around this upcoming full moon, then I'll add more to these positions and prepare for the July and August timeframe. And since I brought up the traditional markets moments ago, let's quickly review a couple things, starting with the V-shaped recovery that we're getting on the NASDAQ, which has been absolutely mind-blowing. Now we're literally less than 2% away from, just around 2% away from hitting a new all-time high. So with that being said, I actually want to bring up the year of 2020 to show you what happened during that V-shaped recovery from the C19 crash. And look at this. So this is the June, or leading into the June full moon. And you see how we were literally in a very similar place. Kind of like exactly like where we are now. We were almost fully recovered. And then crazy that by June 10th, we were already pushing into new all-time highs. And then we had this short-lived correction, again, kind of like a quick bull trap to just shake some people out. It's very typical. And it happens at all the significant levels, getting into the golden pocket around the 702, correct down, getting to the top of the golden pocket, correct down, getting to the 888, correct down, and then obviously getting slightly above highs to swipe through that liquidity, correct down, and then you continue. So this whole structure and this recovery, although it's not what most expect, it's all happening just to fill out all these levels of stuff that we were arduously trading through prior to that. So you can see here, this sideways trading range was from 2019 all the way to the end of, so this was almost a full year of just chop before release. And then once we got overextended, we swiped through all of that liquidity, back testing the exact same lows that we got in June right here. And then V-shaped recovery, push further. Absolutely crazy the way this all went down, but that's history. I just want us to focus on this move up being pretty much fully recovered into the June full moon. Mamma mia, pretty wild. So if you look at what this led to, it was about the same thing, pretty much the same with Bitcoin. 6 days after the full moon, depending on how you count it. So if we have the full moon on the 11th and we were to look 6 days after that, including the end date, I suppose, it would bring you to the following Monday, right after Trump's birthday. That's something to consider. Here, if you look, June 15th was that pivot, again on a Monday, right after Trump's birthday. So this could be something to align with how the market is getting some pressure from just theory leading into how the upcoming FOMC will go regarding the interest rate cuts. So you can keep that in mind as a side note. Now let's quickly explore where the NASDAQ was trading into the week of Trump's first birthday as a president in June 2017. I do think this is pretty fascinating because when I zoom in, this is the June full moon. You'll see that we also rallied into June 9th. And then we had a massive liquidation, but when we look at it, it was also about 5% overall immediately, just like the prior example in 2020, by the way. So it's crazy. Like we did the same exact thing with the same president. This was at the beginning of his term, and the June correction that we had initially at the same time frame leading into his birthday was also at the end of his first term. Here we are restarting his second, or we're starting his second term. Will we get a birthday correction for Trump? Well, data seems that we're at least due for one, right? With such a crazy V-shaped recovery that we've gotten lately. I know it's a little noisy, but look at this, man. Yeah, sure. A little pullback would be sensible. I mean, shit, especially if we were to backtest this level here at 20,600 points. I don't necessarily think we need to fill this whole gap, but that would backtest a key level of resistance that we had last year. Anyways, going back to this June 9th into the 12th was an initial correction. Then we had a bit of a double bottom kind of vibe into the 15th of June, by the way, day after his birthday. Let me put the moon cycles back on. Oh, textbook right there into the new moon, which was a rejection. So this was like a micro bull trap. And then we came down one more time into the weekend, or the 4th of July time frame. So that's definitely something to consider. Then the pivot after July 6th. So it's clear that June 15th, the day after Trump's birthday, this birthday time frame is very significant here. Same thing with moving into the 11th of June. And I believe the reason why, I think, is because in sidereal astrology, this would be the time when the sun is moving from Taurus into Gemini in the actual sky, around the date of June 15th. I believe this is the reason why it's happening. Obviously, Taurus, the bull, you all know that connection to the markets. So there's a financial aspect there, but there's also another financial aspect tied to Gemini since it is ruled by Mercury. This is where we get the word merchandise from, or commerce. The fiat money system, the Federal Reserve System, is mercurial. It is ran by Mercury. It's all Mercury vibes. right? It's money created out of thin air. Mercury is the prince of the power of the air. It's all air, make believe, fairy dust. So this is all tied to Mercury, and I think there's something symbolic about this pivot with what's happening in the actual sky. So Gemini ruled by Mercury, and the day of the week that's associated with Mercury is a Wednesday, miércoles. It's the day of Mercury. And that would be the first Mercury day since the sun moves into Gemini, again, ruled by Mercury. Just go to this real quick so you can see for yourself. Sign ruler Mercury, zodiac element air, right? Something symbolic here. And June 18th is the day Fed Chair Powell will spellcast the markets at the next FOMC meeting. What is Mercury? The god of trickery, deceit. All right, so will we get a similar manipulation as we got back during June full moon in 2020 and June 2017, both during Trump's presidency and around his birthday? Well, the fact that we have the day before Trump's birthday being a Friday the 13th, and this is where the Donald Trump birthday decode gets very spicy. Because he has, well, on Friday the 13th, that's coming up this week, we have a 64 double-digit date numerology, which is the same date numerology as his assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania last year on July 13th. As you can see, they both have the 64 double-digit date numerology and the 19 standard date numerology. Also, his birthday last year was the same date numerology, 64 and 19. For those who were following my work last year, you know for a fact how many times I brought up this number connection for Trump with the 64. He was born in 46, going against Kamala Harris, who was born in 64, the year of the Wood Dragon. She lost, and the most famous assassination attempt in Butler was on that 64 date numerology, as I just showed you. Also, 64 days later was the next assassination attempt in West Palm Beach when he was golfing. This was another one that made a big stir. So this was massive, all these 64 connections, and it's definitely interesting how this year on Friday the 13th, we have the day before Donald Trump's birthday is a Friday the 13th, and it will be the same date numerology as we were getting as his assassination attempt last year. And also, from that birthday, connected to that assassination attempt, is 11 months and 1 day. That's your 111 code, just like Bitcoin recently hit 111K and corrected $11,000 immediately. And the crash happened because of Donald Trump, or at least that's who they are blaming. So this week ahead is clearly very important and has several connections to key years where we're at this similar stage in the cycle. And with the FOMC being the following week, it gives us a little bit of a mixed bag how this could all turn out, especially for the following week, the 25th week of the year. But still, all in all, we have a very specific pattern for Bitcoin for the 11th, 14th, 15th, and since that lands after the upcoming full moon for the 14th and 15th, and I've just shown you how Bitcoin tends to continue to correct through the June full moon, this gives a higher probability that the days around Trump's birthday will be a correction for the market. Since Bitcoin's especially going to be trading alone, then you can isolate this for Bitcoin. But listen carefully. This does not mean that Bitcoin has to go lower than where we already corrected to at the 100K level. So let me just get back to this main Bitcoin chart over here. We don't need to go lower than this pivot low, okay? And if we were to correct lower, then we have perhaps the 98K level, maybe 97K. So again, not much lower than where we already corrected this week. And this is why I think it's important that we should not bank on a deeper pullback, because you see what it takes to get Bitcoin to pull back right now. It needs to be they're fishing for anything at this point to liquidate people. All right. And it's the most unnecessary, bizarre, weird shit that they need to push the market down and to blame. Right. So if there was something to occur this upcoming week with Trump, that would obviously facilitate the pullback, but it would be in alignment with the stock market being overextended, anyways. This V shaped recovery was way too fast. So I don't really care what's going to come next. I think a lot of you are probably in the same boat, but I do think many sat on the sidelines and did not have any limit orders set throughout this recent correction. And that's on you guys. You know, wanting to get a better and better entry and lower prices, like I really don't know what to tell you. Being able to get Doge back at 17 cents, I think was amazing, considering if you look at the local top, that was a 35% correction already, and we've come back to the levels that we were trading at on this like April 22nd candle. So buying the exact bottom to this recent move over here was already 27% up. That'd be way better than have gotten in almost 80% from that level. And if you look at how much room we have from that recent correction at around 17 cents to the recent highs, that's 174%. And to the total all-time high, we're looking at 300%. You'd be getting kind of greedy right now, wanting more. I'm just saying. I think we swiped through all of the May 8th liquidity on a lot of projects. And if you saw something swipe through the May 8th liquidity completely or go even lower, like the XRP example, then you can't be asking for much more. And that is why you see XRP reacting the way that it is now. So whatever pullback we get, it could turn out to be like an inverse head and shoulders. This kind of example over here, if I was to put like a 12-hour chart, you'd kind of see what I mean. So something like this. Oh, let me make this a little bit brighter. Let me get rid of that. So something like that. Oh no, this is getting tedious. TradingView likes to be tedious. I think you guys understand what I'm saying here. And this is like the most awkward head anyways, right? Like, but what this could be pointing to, if I was to turn off all this noise and just put on the indicators, let me go over here real quick, actually, would be the 34 EMA. A back test on the 34 EMA. Perhaps we tap at about 103. Then we build the right shoulder from this left shoulder head, inverse head and shoulders pattern. But of course, that would be sketchy looking because then it would look like a bigger head and shoulders pattern is playing out with your left shoulder head, right shoulder. This is why I wouldn't want to play this game right now, trying to be so perfect and so dialed in. It's just, it's insanity. We can see what just happened past couple days, where we had a major liquidation event and now we're back up higher than where we were last Thursday. Like, this stuff is crazy, right? So this is, I'm going to expect more of the same. All right. And now let's not waste any more time. Let's move into these charts with a more traditional technical analysis for you guys so that you can see this next move that the market maker will give us will probably be very elusive. And I want to start with this pattern. So again, this is very experimental what I'm showing you here, but this is like what would be the most messed up thing for them to do to us right now, for the people who are not prepared. And it would be the fractal pull from over here through here. So I'm pulling the fractal from this correction up to the May 23rd timeframe. And then also it would be similar to the way that we were moving at the Q4 timeframe of 2024 last year. So what would this be like? Well, it would be, I know many of you can that use Elliott Wave will say ABC correction, but whatever, I don't care. But this correction moving up to about 108K, really kind of an arduous pattern. Perhaps we get there a little sooner. It doesn't need to follow this resistance trend line, but just entertain the idea. Imagine we got up there, it could be even by Trump's birthday. And then, or we get something like literally perfectly like this, where we correct right after the full moon by a couple days. We grind to the upside into the upcoming new moon. Then we get a short term correction after the new moon, like we've been seeing in our pattern. But then we get like a 4th of July liquidation, like that. And you see where this lands 3rd, 4th, 5th of July. And we swipe down into that level, and then we push higher from there. So overall, July still looks like we're entering price discovery into August, and then we might not get much higher than this. I don't know. 125k Bitcoin is pretty fucking high for the market cap that it has right now. Of course, I would want to entertain higher targets, but this would be like, what would be the most messed up move to do? It would be this, in my opinion. It would be this. Give us a lot of time before another crazy shakeout that's quickly bought back up and springboards to new all-time highs, and then Bitcoin only gets to like 125k. So all the Bitcoin maxis are like, we're gonna go to a million. Nope. And then what happens is during this whole phase over here, Bitcoin dominance is breaking down. Bitcoin price can go up while Bitcoin dominance is breaking down. It would just be stable coins start moving, shuffling. So yeah, man, I think this is a high possibility of how it can go. Although that for me, I'm not really thinking. I would think we get that over sooner. But if they wanted again to make the most ridiculous fake out ever, it would be something like this. Trapping us sideways, giving us a feeling like we've had a V-shaped recovery, and then boom, big manipulation into early July. Here you can see this kind of concept where we got to early July, a major flash to the downside. Here we were pretty much correcting in the first 6 days of every month, like all the time at the beginning. I don't really want this to happen, but I'm at the stage right now where, like, if you can be an analyst and be somebody who just looks at these markets neutrally, find the most painful move. And to me, I thought this could be it. So I don't want to waste too much of your time here, but I think this is a fascinating concept. This concept might not be playing out. Again, I'm not banking on it, hence why I didn't wait. I was not going to wait for a 92k Bitcoin to buy altcoins. I took my chance with the altcoins when I saw things like Doge down 30%. How far down has XRP been from? We're going to 207. It's been 36% correction from the current highs. I mean, I don't know what more people want at this stage. But anyways, let's get to the weekly chart for Bitcoin. We're going to hide these drawings and we can see, ooh, precarious move. Well, we did test the 8, gorgeous. Okay, so this I like to see. We did stab into the 8 simple moving average. I like that. We have all of the moving averages in a bullish posture. So we have the 8 above the 13, 21, 34, 55. Do we have a bi-weekly coming in? Yes, we do. And this bi-weekly looks beautiful to me, but CME is opening later and CME will have a major gap because I believe CME closed at 107, yeah, 104.7. Okay. That's going to be a big gap to the upside. And if you look at where CME was closed, it was right at that same level. That was back testing this prior high peak in Q4 of last year into Trump's inauguration. So I like that. I would like us to hold that, back test it as a support, and on bi-weekly candles looks great to me. But yeah, this bi-weekly structure on the regular chart, it looks fine. Nothing too weird about it. But yeah, this is like the kind of stuff when we start seeing a little bit of squeeze in these moving averages again. Anyways, doesn't really matter. Bi-weekly looks good. We're higher. Monthly, obviously, we had a continuation candle on the May monthly close. The weekly is looking fine. We flashed down to retest the 8. That's good. Good for me. Not a real danger signal there. 5-day back above. Let me make sure this is accurate. Yep. Holding the 8 on the 5-day close. The next 5-day close is tomorrow night. This looks great. All the moving averages are in bullish posture on the 5-day. 3-day also looking fine to me. Closure tonight. Fuck, if we can close above that, that would invalidate that prior candle. So bullish engulfing. But again, candlestick analysis and that kind of stuff is maybe fourth or fifth importance in my personal TA style, but I still have at least enough competence to utilize it. I would suggest the same for you if you want to be more well-rounded in your analysis. 2-day looking okay. I mean, we've swiped back to the 21 holding, and we're back above the 8 so far. 2-day closes tomorrow night. So yeah, I think like if we can't hold this, if we swipe down to fill that gap with the CME, we're now hovering around the 104 level probably on spot, and any 3-day closures below that 104 level will likely swipe us down to 101 again. Okay, so this makes sense. A double bottom on these levels around the full moon, perhaps even leading into Friday the 13th or Trump's birthday, that would make sense. We got too quickly bought back. So that inverse head and shoulders idea is likely the micro inverse head and shoulders, by the way, which on like a 4-hour chart starts to look a little more sensible. So we have left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Maybe bounce on this 200 EMA on the 4-hour. Yeah, this looks fine. We've already had the wolf cross to the downside on the 12-hour, so that's showing a sign of weakness. But when you're looking at these smaller time frames, you could get that to come right back in the other direction real fast. And we wouldn't have a wolf cross on the daily unless we start seeing some serious downside pressure for Bitcoin. So yeah, it's not as bad. Could be the 8-hour could be telling us some stories though on the 55 simple. So keep that in mind. Again, a little too weird to see this weekend pump. And I think a back test on the 12-hour 200 EMA is potential if we get a big flush. But it would probably go similar to this, where it'd be short-lived, quick bounce. And like I said, we get through the full moon. Bitcoin tends to bottom after the full moons, but it doesn't. I can't say that it's going to be a lower low. We have a bottoming structure, right? Okay, let's get over to Ethereum. Really nothing to say, but clearly Ethereum is starting to form a crown top. This is something that XRP likes to do. Like we call it a Bart head. This is getting close to being showing some top signals. For one, just perpetual rejections on the 200 simple moving average. That's not good. Also, we're holding onto the 200 EMA for dear life. I do think multiple days with this 34 crossing above the 200 EMA could cause some downside pressure. So we're squeezing now at this upper range around a 2,700 resistance. Let's call it 2,670. And yeah, the 55 could easily get back tested at this time, although that's the break into that May 8th candle. And I've said this a million times, May 8th candle, it's a dangerous candle. We've seen XRP completely flush through it. We've seen Doge flush through it. I mean, has Sol, yes, Solana has flushed through the May 8th candle. So that was a really good call on my part to teach you guys about that concept. Altcoins love to do this, where you get this major liquidity spike and later we tend to fill it all through, even if it's like a really messed up way of filling it all through. There are some anomalies though, like Aave has been doing incredible, but we're talking about Ethereum. Ethereum has this break here at around 2,200, which is right there at the 55 simple moving average on the daily. A back test of that would be healthy, but really by the time you start testing that low, you have thin air all the way until 2,100. Let's call it 2,000 psychological level. Yeah, that'd be a bummer. But hey, we had that happen already, guys. We had this same shit happen last year where I remember teaching you this recently. Let me leave this on. Let me move the moon cycles on. So we have this crazy 19% candle before the May full moon. We topped on the May full moon. We held up until the following new moon, and then we corrected after it. Look at what we're doing today. We have this May 8th candle, 21%, crazy green candle. Then we top on the May full moon, then we hold up into the following new moon, and then we correct after that. So following that pattern would be pretty messed up, but we did it before, and we held on the 55 simple until we got a wolf cross. So this time around, maybe we just come back to it and bounce, and we don't have that wolf cross. But it's looking like a 2000. It's looking like a retest of the 55 simple on the daily for ETH as a possibility. It's about a 11% correction. So if Bitcoin only had a 5% correction from here, even, or yeah, we just tap on the 55 simple on the daily for Bitcoin, that would be good enough, in my opinion. All right, XRP. My goodness, it's really been holding on to this $2 level for dear life, hasn't it been? And everyone's getting really excited about, my outlook on XRP, hearing things like me talk about a $14, $15 XRP, and they're acting like this is my first time ever saying this. This is old information. For those who have my exit strategy blueprint, which was released years ago, you know that my upside targets for XRP have always been on the medium level, not fully conservative, but on the medium level, it was $14 to $15. Why? Because of Gematria. Because we have the 15 in Chaldean. This is something I've been saying for a long time now. So yes, I see on the conservative side $8 to $10. 10 is more a psychological level, but we can quickly get through that and go to 15. This chart I just shared today over on X. You guys can check out my X account if you'd like. It's at Waters Above. Just make sure you spell above ABVE without the O. And I shared this chart, and what it's showing me is that the fractal that I pull from here, from this breakout to the next breakout, or phase one, or we shouldn't even call it phase one, but this first stage, I don't know what to call it really. It's in alignment with our breakout that we just had, and then this 200 days or so of sideways trading in the same exact trading range we've been in, and then we have a violent breakout coming in after like into the second week of July, and then we're topping in late July into early August. Let's give it a little bit of like a week plus or minus, and it swipes through 15 if I was to match the exact level at the breakout and to match the level that we had at the recent peak. And also the lows that have come in have been pretty similar too. So yes, I'm aware you would need like an $880 billion market cap for XRP. Whatever, dude. You know how much fucking money is in this space? Like, this is nothing. This is literally nothing at the end of the day. So I think that's easy. Given that we see across the board an alt season. What's Bitcoin's market cap right now? Trillion? It's fucking 2 trillion. I forget this stuff because I don't even pay attention to it. 2 trillion, guys. Yeah. All right. Anyways, I'm not going to argue this kind of stuff. Alt seasons are alt seasons. This type of stuff is pretty easy to assume. It would be a total move of about 575%. Now, given I've talked mostly about the $10 level in the recent YouTube video, and just my overall thesis is that 8 to 10 on the conservative side shouldn't be too hard to accomplish. But for those people that believe that 10 is too much, this is why I talk so much about the $7 level in the past. There's connections like Ripple with the 760 connection. There's the 2.7 or the 72, $7.20. There's plenty of ways to look at this, as well as the $8.60 level. This is stuff that I teach in my exit strategy blueprint, by the way, which is part of my crypto mastermind course. So if you're interested, go to watersabove.com. Also, though, you guys are Patreon supporters. So if you look at the link in the description box or the link in the pinned comment, it has a private link for you as Patreon supporters. You can access that private page using the password wolfpack, and then it will give you access to a private page that has all of my courses for 20% off. So the biggest discount available. So check that out if you're interested. There's also a package deal there, which packages together 3 of my mastermind courses. And I think it's 25 to 30% off. So an even bigger discount. So check that out. But getting back to this I don't want to spend too much time talking about this particular chart today because I think it speaks for itself. Right now, I just think we need to really consider where XRP is going in the short term and how, yes, we did bottom 9 days after the new moon, like we've been pretty much doing all the time. But the way that we're getting quickly bought up right now means that we could have another rejection coming in pretty soon, maybe around the 230 level, and coming back to the similar levels that we were trading at late in the month into the beginning of the month. And now, as for a swipe even lower, like below 205, I don't know about that right now, guys. If you remember the post that I made, I shared it here with our mastermind community in the TA channel. Let me see if I can find it right here. Absolutely legendary how this went. I drew out this red box, told you the levels, swiped perfectly through that level, and the next day we were out of it. And we've had a pivot exactly like we usually get. So yeah, this is primed and ready. This is primed and ready. But when we're looking at that fractal that we have, let me see if I have the chart with the fractal. It'd be so great if I remembered these, but when you have this many charts, how the hell could you remember? Let me see. Boom. All right, so this is showing actually a liquidity spike around the 8th or 9th, so that's good. And then we just kind of grind up. Obviously here we got the lows. And then it also shows again at the end of the month lows, which I could entertain that because we have a new moon sell-off. And then that is like pile in because this shit could be going up in a straight line after that. Literally. This is showing that after July 6th, we could be breaking out into price discovery in like a week. So this fractal is actually scary how similar it's been with all the pivot lows and all the pivot highs. And what we're seeing right now is we've gotten another pivot low come in. A lot of this corrective energy that we get at certain time frames is also pretty spot on. So I would not disregard this chart. At this time, I think we're going to hold the $2 level. If we do momentarily swipe below $2 because Bitcoin, for whatever reason, corrects to like 97 or 98, I think it will be rapidly bought back up, just like the recent correction that we've had for XRP. Very quickly bought back up. Now let's move on to Helium Mobile. I think this would be my first time ever looking at this project. We're looking at the daily chart. Woof. All right, so December of or October of 2023, this thing went up. This is like the way meme coins trade, you know, like they just go up in a straight line and then they sell off all of their value forever until they go back to where they started. Obviously, I'm not calling this a meme. I'm just saying, like, if you go on Dex Screener and you pull up a chart of like any meme coin, what this looks like on the daily, those coins look like on the hourly, or like the 30-minute chart, you know, like obviously it's all happening much more rapidly. But this is like how a lot of meme coin charts look, where they, you know, maybe they launch and they immediately dump, or they launch and they immediately pump, but like a majority of the gains that are happening are at the beginning. Just crazy. And then they quickly sell off, maybe have like a double top like this thing did, and then they lose all of their value. So this thing is down now 94%. It has filled all the liquidity from this big spike up, which is a sign of not so sophisticated investors. This thing was a pump and dump. So here I'm just going to draw some important levels. We have from this launch and then where it's swiped above, and now we've filled out that level pretty concretely, and we're still kind of entering back into this territory. So filling out that zone now after what, 300 days? Oh my God. Yeah, after 450 days. So yeah, this is like when you are in stuff like this, you have to sell it all real quick because you don't know how it's going to deal with Bitcoin just continuing to steal dominance from the altcoin market. And if it has its time in the sun, take your profits, man, because fuck, if you got in at this fractal here, there's 2,000% move ahead. That's pretty incredible in 30 days. And then you don't need to sit through this forever. So Everything when it launches can have the opportunity for some isolated liquidity injection and just FOMO piling in really rapidly. Then you have to like look at it for, oh, I took a win, you know. And my suggestion here, and I'm not much of like like a meme coin player or like these into these shit coins on the Solana blockchain. Like that's just not my thing. I'm too busy to be staring at these charts doing that kind of stuff. But for those people that are interested in it, I think where they go wrong is if they're early, they're too scared to take profits early. And then you see what a lot of them become. Not everything becomes the next Pepe, you know? So just be careful, is what I'm trying to say. This is a very typical chart. So I'm starting this off from like a more educational perspective where I think like I'm mostly telling you to avoid this thing. Like I would not want to personally put money into something that's just been perpetually selling off for the past 500 to 600 days where almost all of its gains came in the first month or so. Yeah, I would just avoid. Now, for those who hold this and like want to get out, which could be very much in the cards for many of you, after especially after hearing what I just said, just know that any move up for the altcoin market across the board, this thing on the conservative side is likely going to around here. I can see a couple of these flashes down before the double top, and I could see a couple of these flashes to the upside before it continued lower. So for some reason, the 0024 level, I would pull it to like 0023 to be more conservative, 0021, right around that golden pocket. So I'm going to pull another horizontal ray. That's where I would personally, like if I was in this thing, I would take profits there or at least de-risk. So what does de-risking mean? De-risking means you take your hard-earned money out of the gambling casino. If you put $500 in this shit right now, you would take out $500 here. And then the rest is house money. And then if it goes into oblivion, congratulations. Or if it gets stalled out there and corrects and continues to lose more value over time, you at least didn't lose all your hard-earned money. So that's what you do with venture capital. With venture capital, you typically get like a 3 to 5x, and then you say, okay, it's fine for me to take my hard-earned money out of this. Now, if this thing goes the full way, you know, it's 1,000 whatever percent, and a lot of altcoins are going to do this. So, yeah, you have to decide, do I want to do this with a project that has a chart like this, or do I want to do this with a project that has a much better chart, perhaps a lot more better things going on for it? Now let's look at Stronghold. I'm not sure the last time I covered this, but I believe it was around January at the beginning of the year, so around where this thing was at the top. Now, if I turn on, let me see, okay. Just want to see something real quick. Yeah, okay. So I would pull my fib here because this is where the horizontal trading range really started back in February of 2024. This major impulse that it had, which was amazing, by the way, 2,500%. And then it was followed by a 80% pullback, very typical. And then we had this Wyckoff UTAD. This type of move right here is very elusive and traps a lot of bulls. So this is a what we could call a rare bull trap to the upside. And then after this Wyckoff UTAD, you get a correction down to the 0.5 fib. Sometimes as low as the 382, but this swiped, well, it actually did. I'm not sure if that's official, that swipe right there, but it did come down into the 0.5 fib. I like that. The fact that it came down to that level and then now it's kind of been slightly recovering and building some strength here in the golden pocket. I like this. I think for what it's worth, this is fine. There's the 1618. So it's sitting at around 4 cents. What do we got? 350% to the upside. I'm not sure. And we got about 50 cents. Or sorry, 5 cents. What am I saying? Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think that the time to get in this would have been during this shitstorm over here. Yeah, I mean, in an alt season, these things can do some really wacky things, and you can't solely rely just on like a fib pull. I would have to maybe look into the market cap chart. There could be some secrets there, but yeah, I don't really know what's going on. This is an absolutely ugly chart, by the way. Like, look at this. This is ridiculous. So yeah, whoever got in this at this time, congrats. But as for where we're trading at right now, I'm not sure if there's so much. Okay, because we were looking at some projects that have like a minimum 1,000% move ahead. And this would have to make it to about 10 cents for it to be 1,000% move naturally. It's of course possible. It's of course possible. But yeah, you're talking about like the 8 spot to 9 spot fib extension, which is pretty wild. Pretty wild move. It's possible though. Like these altcoins, definitely. So I would say on the upper end, this could make it to 10 cents. Personally, I think this can make it to 10 cents. I'm going to leave it there because I don't have much to talk about with the chart like this. This is just launched, sold off everything, had a major impulse, and now it's been kind of stuck in that horizontal trading range now for 500 days. The move that it did is very Wyckoff-like, and I don't think it's going to move into a distribution without at least going one leg higher. Although with projects like this that have already had such a major move, it doesn't mean they always have to keep going up and up and up. So we might only make it to like slightly above the 1618 right here to 026, 025, maybe 3 cents, you know, maybe 3 cents, and then it stalls out. And then we have a major correction. So it's a very speculative thing. That's what I'm trying to say. There to 3 cents, and then right there, once it can't hold this level, we dump quickly back into this zone. And then we just have these 3 pyramids. It's very possible. It's very possible. It's not the cleanest chart, guys. So doing TA on this kind of stuff is pretty difficult, but I could entertain that move to 3 cents for sure. 10 cents, it's a little up in the clouds, but you guys know altcoins. Now we're looking at Shiba Inu. Oof, it's been a while. Wow. Okay. So yeah, not the meme du jour anymore, eh? It looks like it's even been more lucrative to be in Doge. Yeah, because buying the absolute lows on this, what is this, 80 something percent? What do we got on Doge for, what was it, 7 cents? Oh shit. It went to 5. Oh my. So yeah, if you bought Doge's correction in September, you're still actually even doing a little better than Sheeb. Okay, yeah, whatever. You don't always need to compare shit that way, but I'm just kind of pointing out the fact that I'm surprised this is doing what it's doing right now. But yeah, you know, it's Pepe time now. Everyone wants the frog coins and other miscellaneous animals. It's fucking creepy. Everybody in crypto is creepy now. I don't know what's going on. Too much weird shit going on. All right. This is a pretty long trading range. That's kind of nice to see. So we have a lot of data to work with, like working with 1,500 days of trading range. We've had a couple swipes up into the lower of the golden pocket. We also had a swipe up above the 702. That's good. But yeah, just a ton of support at the 236, which I suppose is fine. It's nothing to like, it's not near, as bad as being down near the absolute bottom, which we traded through quite a bit into the finality of the Shiba pump, and then we came right back to the same zone in the bear market, which was 2 years ago from today, by the way. So maybe that's also symbolic, is like the low. Oh man, yeah, weird. Okay, so this just had a straight line breakout into that February, March time when Bitcoin dominance broke down. Okay, so when Bitcoin dominance breaks down, we have proof that this thing can go up 400% pretty rapidly. So I do think minimum we're getting a double top on Shiba. I just don't know how much anyone cares about this stuff anymore. we're in like a different world with memes, and obviously there's a lot more energy going into stuff like AI. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. I don't know if this can make it to the 1618 personally. That is a fucking crazy move. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's not gonna happen. But the 1618 on this pull is possible. So I'm gonna mark that level off. It's like a 90 zeros and a 1-4. All right, so let me double click that, bring it back to reality. Yeah, I could entertain that one, that right below 00014. This would be like what Cardano did last cycle, by the way. Cardano made like a barely new all-time high, but it wasn't enough to prove that it could swipe through all that liquidity. And yeah, I mean, actually might be a very, very similar move. Let me just show you really quickly with ADA. So we have the all-time high into January 2018, and then we have about, yeah, this went up 132% higher, but the initial move that it had was like 80%, and then we had a pretty deep correction of 50 something percent, and then we went up one more time. So that right there is 128%. I mean, Sheep doesn't need to do the same exact thing, obviously, but this gives you something to consider. So if we were to go up 100% from there, let's mark that off. Put you to that 1-8. I mean, 2 is possible. What would that be? Yeah, I mean, like Doge would have to do quite a bit. So I think right there makes more sense. I'm not too confident that we'll get higher than this 002. It's quite a move. But I think this will move with Doge, kind of the long and short of the story here. I just rather invest in Doge personally. Maybe this could be like the counterplay though. Like if you're somebody who holds VeChain, you want a little bit of Vito. If you hold Theta, you want to hold a little bit of T Fuel. That could kind of be the play. Consider it, but that's not financial advice. This again is venture capital, guys. You only want about 1 to 2% of your portfolio max and stuff like this. And the same thing goes for any meme. All right, there's a first for this one too. Orca. What? Wow, this thing's spelling something. It's like when the plane writes in the sky, like, Dorothy, will you marry me? It's like kind of fucked up in the smoke. Yeah, this is, oof. All right, Orca. It's almost looks like a whale in a way. Where do I get started? Okay. God, you guys, what are you doing to me? What the actual fuck is this chart? It's gonna take a minute for me to really decipher what the actual fuck is going on here. But I'm pretty good at this stuff. When you're doing this for 4 years every weekend, you kind of have a pretty good grasp. Okay, some major levels, man. I mean, wow. I can't even wait to get into the percentage moves on this one. This is no, wild. Okay. So we are breaking down from here at this moment, and then you can see we've come back up to this level twice. So this is clearly $8.70, significant level. Okay, not just launching from here from 275, but coming back to 240, and then you see right over here we come up and get rejected. So this second line I drew, very, very important, and funny enough, that's where we're trading at right now. Then we've dumped even deeper into the lows of the selling climax. Now over here it just starts to become absolutely messy, so I don't want to put too much of my energy into that, but that'd be like your bear market stuff, like back at 77 cents. Since we've had this major automatic rally and we've just been doing supply tests to the downside, this never became an SOS or a sign of strength. Rather, it became a very awkward yeah, like double top ish thing. But still, you can see that all of these times is mostly in alignment with Bitcoin dominance breaking down just slightly. Um, and from where we're at now to get back to this top level is about 260%. To get back to the current highs is about 700. Now, I don't know who the fuck would be buying this thing for $20 plus. It's just like, what? Okay, whatever. My opinion doesn't matter. I'm not trying to get emotional here. Pretend that I don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, guys, whenever I say some of these things. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Dude, maybe. Maybe. Nope. Yeah, I don't think so. What even is this thing? No. All right, this is very, very tough to determine how this will go. So I'm going to actually, because we're at an hour and 30 right now, it's really best that I wrap this up here. I think this is actually holding up pretty well in this massive trading range. It's actually building out volume here in a zone that it didn't spend too much time. And I think we've filled out the lower end already. We've now stair stepped up. And the next thing is stair stepping up above the 786. So there's room for something like this to occur. Um, Kind of like where you break out, you backtest the 702, and then you have like a weird double top. Guys, remember like XRP, XLM, Monero, Dash, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, these things didn't even make it up to a double top in the last cycle. Just want to remind you. So, yeah, these things don't need to just because go to crazy price discovery targets. I know that sounds kind of opposite of a lot of what I've been talking about lately, but this is why I've been leaning into things like XRP and XLM for my investment thesis this cycle, because they didn't have all-time highs that last time around, and this time around they have much more of a place in the current financial system that we're moving into, right? The one that is being ushered in by the Trump administration and all globalists. So things like Orca are like you're just having fun, you know? Um, Sorry about these outside noises. Yeah. So I don't really have too much to say. This chart is pretty wild and wacky. It doesn't have much prior chart history, like to see how it went before the C19 crash. This is clearly showing that it could lose like literally all of its value, like a typical altcoin. This major impulse to the upside still brought you back lower than where this thing launched at, and it did it twice, and now it's just been chopping around, and this sort of chop that we're getting looks very unsophisticated and very tough to determine where this can go into price discovery. So sure, maybe $40 is in the cards if it wants to do something similar to the prior example I just gave you with like the Cardano slash potential Shiba Inu move. But other than that, like you'd really be hoping for a double top on this and then praying to the crypto gods that this becomes relevant in some way to push it up higher. But I'm going to leave that here. I hope you guys appreciate today's podcast. It was packed from start to finish with so much information. And remember, we have the CME opening up in a little bit, so there will be a gap to the upside unless for whatever reason before CME there's some sort of flash correction by the time I'm processing and uploading this. Probably unlikely. So just watch out for tomorrow where the traditional markets open. We have that happening a couple days prior to the full moon. I already gave you my decode for the full moon and for Donald Trump's birthday next Saturn day. And it's going to be a very interesting week to see if we have similar patterns play out as we did in 2020, 2021, 2017, and even last year. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. I appreciate and am grateful for every single one of you. Wishing you all an amazing rest of your weekend and week ahead in the Matrix. Much love.